This is Marty Bent. What's up, freaks?
And I'm Gary Leland, and you're listening to episode 89 of the Crypto Cousins podcast.
Feed your interest in Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies by joining Hall of Fame podcaster Gary Leland on the Crypto Cousins podcast. And remember, we are all cousins in the world of crypto. This week's price of Bitcoin.
$5,212. That's up $464, or 8.9% over the last 7 days. Howdy, howdy, howdy. Marty, welcome to the Crypto Cousins podcast. How are you doing?
Gary, thank you for having me. It's a long time coming. I'm very appreciative to be here.
Well, I don't know. I think you may have been podcasting longer than me.
I don't know. This is episode 89. You're a couple of episodes ahead of me at this point. So
I'm the old timer here. Yeah, we met at BitBlockBoom last year. Had a great time. It was a great event. I didn't really know you before that, but I kind of got to know you and wanted to bring you on the show here.
Oh, thank you.
I read your newsletter every morning, by the way.
Thank you. I like that. It's a great compliment. That's what I try to. It's a little morning rant, if you will.
It's short and sweet and straight to the point, and I really like it.
Before we go any further, I want to say thank you for throwing the BitBlockBoom conference last year. It was one of two conferences I went to, and it was money well spent and an incredible weekend. I'm very excited to come again this year.
Thanks. I really appreciate that. We're going to get into that in a minute. On this show, I have a lot of first-timer, new people into the world of crypto. Have it give us a short 1-minute bio, just a little brief summary so they can know who you are.
Yeah, so I've been into Bitcoin for a while. I have an economics background. I worked for a managed futures fund out of college and sort of fell in love with Bitcoin while in college and while working at this managed futures fund. And over the last 4 or 5 years, have been sort of working to get more into Bitcoin, quit finance to learn more about tech and UX design in particular. And in 2017, June 2017, I started a newsletter, Marty's Bent, and this was started out of sort of a necessity of having too many friends and family members email, text, and call me asking about Bitcoin. I said, hey, I'm going to start this newsletter to introduce an aspect of Bitcoin to you every day. If you want to learn about Bitcoin, sign up for this, and you'll get my thoughts on Bitcoin every day. That sort of took on a life of its own on Twitter. More people outside of my family and friends group signed on and took on a life of its own. And the next iteration of that was Tales from the Crypt, the podcast that I host. And that is an interview series and a weekly show I do with my co-host Matt Odell called The Rabbit Hole Recap, and basically talking to Bitcoiners. The interview series is talking to Bitcoiners who are working on the protocol and thinking of it from a philosophical and economic standpoint. And then the Rabbit Hole Recap is a weekly topical show where Matt and I sort of riff off the news topics of the week.
Okay, so you got a couple of my questions there in your opening statement. First of all, your newsletter. I didn't know you started that to help family and friends. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, so it was actually very interesting story. I was, at the time I started Marty's Bent, I was actually sort of in a weird spot in my life where I'd been unemployed for an extended period of time for almost a year, and was really trying to break into the product management world in particular. And still, while I was working towards this, always focusing on Bitcoin. And really the summer of 2017 was when the last bull market was starting, and interest in Bitcoin was rising pretty quickly. And I'd always been that weird Bitcoin friend and weird Bitcoin cousin in my friend and family group. And just naturally, people were texting, DMing, emailing me. And my birthday that year, my parents were in town, and my dad sort of suggested, hey, why don't you're looking for something to do. I know you're itching to produce something. This is probably a good opportunity. He was in the finance world where newsletters are pretty prominent and a popular thing. And he recommended, hey, why don't you start a newsletter about Bitcoin? And so that's what I did. And yeah, it took on a life of its own. I would share the link on Twitter. I was lucky to have a few early endorsements from people like Santiago Siri and Pierre Rochard. He really liked the newsletter and pumped it, and it took on a life of its own. So over the last 2 years, I've been writing that every weekday, and it's been a fun ride.
Are you in New York?
Yes, I'm in Brooklyn.
So you're right in the middle of the heat of the financial markets.
Yeah, we're spoiled here in New York. There's a very very large and high quality Bitcoin community in New York. Obviously, I'm biased, but I believe we have one of the best Bitcoin meetups in the world, and our Bit devs, again, we're spoiled to have incredibly talented and open and generous developers here in New York, and people like John Newberry, Matt Corallo, James O'Byrne, anybody working at Unchained. They throw an incredible event once a month where you're able to learn about what's going on in the Bitcoin development world, and that just naturally leads to you meeting some very cool people in the city who have similar interest in Bitcoin.
Well, I was thinking about coming up this year for Consensus. Should I? Would I? Could I? I mean, I don't have a ticket yet, and I'm not sure if I really need one. I don't know if it's like South by Southwest, where at South by Southwest, it costs a ton to go, but you really don't need to go. There's so many events around there. So do I need to get a ticket, or do I need to just come for the events that are happening around Consensus?
I think the latter part of your decision there is the best way to go. Do not waste your money on the ticket. In my experience over the last few years, being in New York around this event in particular, I've never once gone, but I have gone to the events around it and have benefited greatly from meeting incredible people, having great conversations, and putting faces to avatars of people I've spoken to on Twitter for years.
Well, if I do that, I'm going to count on you to tell me where to go and what's happening around town. You could be my inside man.
Gary, you'll be on all the VIP lists, don't worry.
Sounds good. Now I'm even more interested. Let's get into your podcast real quick. I'm probably one of the only crypto podcasts that ask about your podcast.
You've been in it for a while. That's one thing that I was very impressed from last summer, is that you've been in podcasting for over a decade.
Some people claim I'm one of the first 50. I claim 100. That might be kind of bold to say in itself, though, but it's been a long time. I'm kind of confused on one thing, and I think you might have answered it earlier. You have Tales from the Crypt and Rabbit Hole Recap. I'm kind of confused what the difference is between the two, or is it a segment of? I mean, I'm confused. Please explain that.
This is a product of my laziness. I do not want to set up two different podcast entities.
Oh, so there are two different shows on the same feed.
Yeah, two different shows. I like to think of Tales from the Crypt morphing into somewhat of a network. We call it TFTC. And so, yes, under the TFTC umbrella, there's Tales from the Crypt, which is the interview series, which I host, which is more one-on-one and far-ranging topic of conversation. And then Rabbit Hole Recap is more focused, where it's just Matt and I talking about a very specific list of topics that have happened in the last 7 days.
Well, now that makes sense to me then, because I was thinking it was the same show.
That's the Tales from the Crypt difference. We're not afraid to push the edge and confuse people a little bit.
You ever have any concerns that the TV show or comic Tales from the Crypt is going to contact you and say, hey, we need to shut this down?
Yeah, it's always on the top of my mind. I'm waiting. I actually heard some rumors recently that they're thinking about revamping it. So
that could be bad news.
Bad news could be turned into good news. A cease and desist could work out in our favor. It's from a publicity standpoint, and not that. Yeah, it's actually funny. Tales from the Crypt originated. I didn't actually think of the name as the podcast. I was actually, again, like I was writing the newsletter and was at a juncture where I was like, all right, people are liking this. Like, what's the next iteration? Like, what's the next level? And I actually met up with a good friend of mine now, named Lewis Roberts, who's working at Barstool Sports, which is a big blog and podcast network here in New York. One of the most successful podcast networks in the world. They have some of the most popular podcasts. And I noticed that he was
Barstool Sports?
Yeah.
You need to tell them they need to buy all my sport podcasts domains. I have sport podcasts, baseball podcasts. I have like 60 of them.
Well, you and Matt Odell are domain hoarders.
I probably am. I probably bought all those back in 2004.
You can Maria Kondo your domain name registry as well.
Yeah, you're right. But go ahead. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, so Tales from the Crypt, I met up with Lewis to talk about Bitcoin. I noticed that he was tweeting about Bitcoin. I was like, hey, we should meet up and talk. I'm a big fan of Barstool, and he actually incepted the idea of starting the podcast as the next iteration, like as a good medium to attack and to spread information through. And he actually he's like, dude, I have a great podcast name for crypto too. I'll give it to you. It was Tales from the Crypt. And so like I didn't even come up with it originally, but I did run with it when the opportunity.
Well, if you have to change it, you could always change it to Tales from the Crypto, I guess.
That's too cheesy though. I'm gonna drop. I'm not gonna tell my master plan, but there is a contingency plan if anything does arise. But I hope the good people at Tales from the Crypt appreciate what we're doing on our podcast, and it's an homage to an incredible TV show that we respect dearly.
One of the things that's different about your podcast than most podcasts I listen to is that you guys do a lot of drinking on your show.
Do a heavy amount of drinking, and it's starting to wear on me.
I probably should have sent you some bourbon or something and brought me a thing of vodka in here, and we could have started drinking.
Oh, well, I did just record an episode before this and had a couple of glasses of bourbon, so I'm...
Well, no wonder you said you were ready to record.
Yeah. Feeling a little loose.
How did the drinking evolve on the show?
It was probably like a coping mechanism for me being nervous. If we're being completely honest with it, I was bringing... so we've used Barstool Studio...
You record at Barstool Studios?
Not anymore. No, I have not recorded at Barstool in over a year. But when the podcast first started out, that's where I was generous enough to be using their studios in odd hours. But yeah, so like the first guest on was Pierre Rochard, and we had a couple bottles of wine, and the conversation went well. And yeah, at first it was probably like me being a more natural conversationist when I have a drink or two in me, and then two, you find really quickly that getting the smart people a little tipsy has them open up a little bit and wax poetic in ways they otherwise probably wouldn't.
They might even call you back saying, "Hey, I think I said something I should have kept to myself."
That's happened before.
Speaking of drinking, last year at the Satoshi Nakamoto dinner the night before BitBlockBoom, oh my gosh, how much wine do you think was consumed by that crowd?
Plenty.
That wine never quit coming.
That never quit coming. The last thing I remember about that, or it's not that I have no memory from the end of that night. The last memory from that night is them locking us in the restaurant because we were having such a good time talking around the bar after dinner that we... I
left at 10 because I made a mistake of driving. So I left at 10 so I could drive. This year I'm getting an Uber.
Got to get an Uber. The post-dinner cocktail conversation was awesome, and we got politely asked to leave because we were there for too long.
Well, they made some money off of us being there, that's for sure.
That room was packed. It was buzzing.
It was packed, and like I said, the wine never quit pouring. Let's go over your podcasting. There's some other things I want to go over. What is one of your favorite episodes of all times that you did?
There's so many. There's so many different ones. I've talked about one that I think will stand the test of time was the one I did with Bitcoin Sign Guy last year in July. Incredible person, incredible thinker, very eloquent.
Speaking of him, he told me last year he'd come on my show, and I sent him an email, but I haven't heard back.
BSG, if you're listening, let's get back to Gary. Come on, dude.
Yeah, BSG. I want to hear you. I want to do an interview with you.
Yeah. So he's a favorite, and then it's hard to choose. I love all of them. I mean, that's the thing with the podcast is I try to have conversations with my guests multiple times before they come on, so not only are they somebody that I'm interviewing, but it seems like we have a rapport, we know each other, and so I feel like each episode I try to get something unique out of each person, but obviously there are instances where I have not met the person, and one instance of like interviewing Jack Dorsey was obviously, it was huge. It was just like, wow, I can't believe it.
I have a question about that interview. Since you brought it up, but everywhere I see people are saying he buys $10,000 worth of Bitcoin a week on his app.
Come on, Gary.
Is that right? He buys 10,000. Is that what he said?
Gary, this is a prime example of fake news. This is the first time I've ever been a part of a fake news instance, and this is a perfect example of somebody taking a quote, misquoting it, and running with it. If you go and listen to the conversation, he clearly states, I told him about the Stacking Sats initiative that we have on Saturdays on Tales from the Crypt, where it just started organically. A couple of listeners started using the hashtag Stacking Sats, which we had pumped on our podcast, and I told Jack about that. I was like, people were looking for you to participate in Stacking Sats last week. He's like, I couldn't. I maxed out my buy limit last week. And that's all he said. And the buy limit on Cash App happens to be $10,000. And people took that comment and ran with Jack is buying $10,000 a week worth of Bitcoin, which he may be. I don't know, but it is a misquote.
It could have been his personal buy limit that's all he buys.
It could be something like, yeah, exactly.
Because I was just kind of going, that's a lot of Bitcoin to buy every week. Why wouldn't you just go buy it over the counter?
Exactly. And I probably think he may be doing that, and he was more trying to draw attention to the fact that there is a buy limit on Cash App, and not really necessarily trying to draw attention to his personal buying habits, if you're trying to read through the lines.
Yeah, that makes sense, yeah. Hey, before we go any further, this is kind of where I do my promotion for BitBlockBoom. Not everybody knows about it, so I want to make sure. But I want to make sure everyone out there knows about BitBlockBoom, the real Bitcoin conference coming to Dallas, Texas. And I say real Bitcoin conference because Bitcoin is all we talk about, not altcoins, not blockchain, just Bitcoin. The second Bitcoin conference is in Dallas, scheduled for August the 17th and 18th. You know, a lot of these conferences I go to now don't even talk about Bitcoin, and they call themselves a Bitcoin conference. But like I said, this is the second year for the BitBlockBoom, and we have a ton of great speakers, so take a look at our lineup. You can use the code RHR for 30% off the price of your tickets. I made that discount code. I already gave it to Matt. That's for you guys. Last year's event was fantastic, so go take a look at bitblockboom.com.
Hell yeah.
Now, last year you didn't stay for Sunday for the brunch.
I did not.
But that was great. And this year, being a speaker, you and Matt get free tickets to the brunch, so plan on staying.
I know. I was jealous. I was at the airport watching the World Cup, looking at pictures on Twitter of the brunch, being like, damn.
It was great. We were all watching the World Cup while we were out there on the porch having our brunch and Bloody Marys. I think people stayed there till like 1 or 2 or something. I mean, that's probably going to be the first thing we sell out of is tickets to the brunch.
Yeah.
It's amazing how many people are staying a second day for the brunch.
Right.
But I want to make sure all the cousins out there knew about that. Another question I have for you to get back to the interview, I guess, is what is your definition of a Bitcoin maximalist? Some people have a negative, some people have a positive connotation, and some people don't.
It's the crux of a lot of controversy. I think Bitcoin maximalist it's a term that was originally coined to portray, and I would argue it's a misnomer for the descriptor it claims to be. When people say Bitcoin maximalist, what I think Bitcoin maximalists would sort of push back is like, we're not Bitcoin maximalists, we're monetary maximalists who believe that if there is a market for free monies which are competing, the soundest, best money will win out. And this is based off of economic history and understanding of monetary dynamics, especially when there's a free market for monies. And so like a Bitcoin maximalist in my mind is a monetary maximalist who believes that if there is a market for free monies, it will coalesce on the best money of those monies. And right now, Bitcoin has the best chance of being that best money. But when it comes to Bitcoin maximalists not being open to competition and sort of trying to paint them with that brush, I sort of don't like that.
I saw Charlie Lee make a statement about Bitcoin maximalists and Bitcoin extremists.
Yeah, I mean...
So what do you think of that, Bitcoin maximalists and Bitcoin extremists? Is there such a thing? Or?
There's like layers. Yeah, so there are the hardliners who will paint you as a shitcoiner and will ardently fight against you trying to pump altcoins and stuff like that. Yeah, so the Bitcoin extremists, again, these are just sort of empty words and empty phrases that people are trying to portray people with a broad brush and not get down to like the nitty-gritty details of the argument. And then going back to what I was saying earlier, like Bitcoin maximalists who would probably more accurately identify as monetary maximalists have the mindset that I agree with, that, hey, this is a market for free monies. We believe Bitcoin has the best chance to be the best money in this market, and therefore the majority of the value will accrue in this network in particular. The ones like Charlie Lee who are trying to paint it as Bitcoin extremists, it's like they have ulterior motives, obviously, and ulterior incentives. So it is the best tactic they have are social tactics to sort of bring down their quote unquote opponents with ad hominem attacks, which would be these sort of descriptors, in my opinion.
I think that's a real good way of looking at that.
Yes.
And that Bitcoin may be have the best chance. I want to talk about you and Matt and BitBlockBoom. I need to get some information about your session, so I'm going to ask you why you're here. And I know you're busy. I have a hard time reaching you on email. So I figure this is the best way is just to ask you right now.
No, it's me.
What is the name of your session? You're doing a live podcast, Rabbit Hole Recap. So what are we naming this? It can't just be Rabbit Hole Recap Live.
A seminar in staying humble and stacking sats.
I like it. And now give me a basic description.
Yeah, so Matt and I have done this once before where we did a live episode and it actually worked out really well. Depending on what tickles our fancy at the given moment, we'll pick a topic or a range of topics and we'll start riffing on them between us and then we'll open it up to the audience, which is actually which would be great for a conference to make it more interactive for an hour or something like that. Open up. We'll pick certain topics and open it up to the crowd to ask questions or join the conversation in a Socratic method and sort of have a conversation that way, which is...
Is it just going to be you two, or you have a guest?
We might have a guest. We might have a couple guests. We might have people coming up and down. Who knows? We'll figure it out.
Okay, that gives me enough. I kind of know what to put down now.
Mm-hmm.
I want to ask you a couple of general questions now. What's your favorite book?
Ooh, wow. That's a good one. I think probably because of the product of it's a very short book, and I appreciate short books because they take less time to read. But this is an annual reread of mine that I've been reading since high school, and Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse, which is a very grounding book for me. It's a good one. The Life of Siddhartha, his journey.
I'm not familiar with that one.
Yeah, it's written by an author, Hermann Hesse, who's a great work of books. Siddhartha in particular is the journey of the Buddha from Siddhartha, a rich prince, to somebody sitting under a fig tree by a river, contemplating life and finding nirvana.
Well, what's your favorite quote then?
Favorite quote? Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. Big Mike Tyson guy.
Who's that by?
Mike Tyson.
I knew I heard that quote. That's a good quote to live by because, yeah, your plan really changes once you get punched in the face.
It's a good one to live by.
You're like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Boy, when he started out, oh, my gosh.
Yeah, exactly. So be reactionary. Just be able to react. I was watching Mike Tyson highlight tapes yesterday, actually. I would not want to take a punch to the ribs from him in the 80s or 90s.
And what's your favorite crypto resource?
Twitter, particularly a list that I've been curating for the last 5 years. I've said this many times before, but my favorite resource is Twitter and TweetDeck in particular. Again, Twitter is an app that you have to become acquainted with, and sort of learn to use and learn to leverage. It's a lot of filtering and a lot of creating your own experience via list, in my opinion. So I've been curating a Bitcoin list for the last 5 years, and it's really helped me sort of learn different perspectives. I don't keep it to Bitcoin only. I have a lot of shitcoiners on there, a lot of people working on other projects, a lot of no-coiners, a lot of dissenters, the Bitfinex of the world, and just helps you get a sort of well-rounded view of how everybody's viewing the space and Bitcoin in particular. So you're able to be prepared when you're entering conversations. And then obviously, Twitter is a great source because it links out to a lot of outside sources. So it's just my list has a constant stream of outside sources that I'm getting linked to and just naturally find data sources and stuff like that.
I think I need to start using TweetDeck. I think I started my Twitter account like in 2006.
Early user.
And I didn't use it for years. I just got it so I could get my name, Gary Leland.
Mm-hmm.
And I really didn't enjoy it. But now that I'm into crypto, all of a sudden I really find myself, that's like one of my favorite tools is Twitter. So I tried TweetDeck years ago, but like I said, I wasn't into Twitter. So I didn't find it a very useful tool or even want to understand it. But now that I'm on Twitter so much and I'm falling in love with it, I really need to get TweetDeck and get that set up and start exploring that. So, yeah, I really need to do that myself.
Yeah, TweetDeck makes you feel like you're in the Matrix. It's just like a constant stream of never-ending tweets.
Yeah, I know. Do you know Mark Hopkins? He's known as Risen.
I don't believe so.
He's a Dallas crypto guy. He tried to get me into Bitcoin, I think, when it was like 300 or something, and I wouldn't listen to him. Now I'm upset about that. I wish I had. But I used to go over there, and he was watching all the crypto people and everybody on TweetDeck. And you're right, it is kind of just all the streams of stuff going by. I can't believe I didn't listen to him.
There's still time. It's still early.
Hey, what advice would you give a crypto newbie?
Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to reach out to people. Obviously, do it in a respectful way, but don't be afraid to ask questions, number one. And then number two, when you're first approaching this, just understand it's going to take time to understand. took me years, many years, to sort of fully grasp what Bitcoin is, how it fits into our world, how it works from a technical perspective, the game theory behind it, how miners, nodes, and developers and users sort of interact with each other. And then you go, that's just Bitcoin. And then you go beyond Bitcoin to the shitcoinery that has been created in its wake, and trying to understand the reasons from which people are approaching those projects is a totally other animal to tackle. So it's just there's so much information to consume and digest and understand that it's just inevitable that it's going to take time to come to an understanding. Do not get frustrated if you feel like you're treading water for a little bit. Have some patience, and if you dedicate the time, it's worthwhile, in my opinion.
I think that some people are more able to grasp the whole concept of crypto or digital currencies than some people. Like, some people can see abstract and some people can't, or some people can appreciate Picasso and some people can't. I think some people can see crypto, digital currencies, and some people have a harder time grasping their mind around it. Like my wife, all I pretty much talk about now is that world, and she still doesn't understand it and asks me questions I know I've answered 100 times. So do you kind of think that's the way people's minds are? Some people are quick to grasp it, and some people it takes a little more because they can't see the abstract?
I think it comes down to if people are like willing to want to learn about the mechanism of money in particular. So that's one thing I talk about on Tales from the Crypt a lot, is that I have a strong belief that people just have a fundamental misunderstanding or just flat out lack of education of what money is and how it's defined today, what the tool of money that we use, what fiat is and what that means as a medium of exchange for money.
I didn't even know the term for fiat until I got into crypto myself.
Yeah. So I think there's sort of a barrier to understanding, a barrier to learning. What I'm trying to get at is, like, people have to want to learn about what money is and ask hard questions about the system that they've grown up in, because Bitcoin is basically saying that, hey, the system that you're used to and that you've lived under your whole life is sort of ass backwards, and we believe that this is a solution to this problem that you don't even know exists right now.
Do you know Jeff Andrew Jr.?
Yes. Jeff is a fellow tri-state area Bitcoiner.
He is doing Bitcoin and barbells a couple of days before BitBlockBoom, and he's my guest next week. That's why I brought it up. I just thought that was pretty good, Bitcoin and barbells.
I think demand for that particular event was very high. So if you are interested in lifting weights a couple days before the BitBlockBoom conference, definitely hit up Jeff ASAP, because that is a high demand event, and it's
on Thursday, his event. I'm interviewing him next week, though, so he seems like a great guy.
Yeah, he is a great guy, and he's doing some incredible work. His Bitcoin IRA solution is something extremely creative and very beneficial. So definitely go check that out. You're basically able to roll your Bitcoin into an IRA that you self-custody with a multi-sig solution that you wholly control, if it's a 2 or 3 multi-sig. And then on top of that, he's building out an accounting software for Lightning too, I believe.
And that's cool. Hey, where can people find you or follow you at? I guess Twitter's the #1 place.
Yeah, Twitter, at Marty Bent on Twitter. Podcast at TFTC21 on Twitter. You can find Tales from the Crypt on your local podcasting platform, and then martysbent.com. No www, just martysbent.com will lead you to the sign-up page for my newsletter if you want to hear my rants every morning.
Well, Marty, I appreciate you coming on the show and joining me for this episode. I really do. And I'm probably going to take you up on hooking up with you and using you for my assistance at Consensus when I'm up in New York. Kind of like South by Southwest. I've only gone in the event once when I spoke there. Every other time I've gone to all the events that surround it. There are plenty of parties around it that are way better.
Yeah, it's going to be the same thing here. There's going to be a lot of after parties. Gary, thank you for having me on. It's been a pleasure. I love what you're doing with BitBlockBoom, this podcast, and I'm very excited to get back down to Dallas and see your face in New York next month.
Hey, have you heard about Safe's dinner?
Yeah. Is that the Friday before?
No. It's on Saturday evening. He's doing like a steak cookout, how to grill steaks. His talk is the government ruined your money with fiat money, and they ruined your food with fiat foods. And he's going to show you how to cook a proper steak.
Count me in.
Hey, I'll let you go. I know your time's short. I appreciate you coming on the show.
Thanks, Gary.
I hope you enjoyed today's show. A big thank you to all the cousins out there that are showing their support by donating, subscribing, and leaving great reviews on iTunes. All of those things help more than you realize. Now, you can subscribe almost anywhere podcasts are available by going to CryptoCousins.com/subscribe. Call me with your comments or questions at 747-777-9471. Or you can email me at TheCryptoCousins@gmail.com, and I'll try to use these on future episodes. Please take a peek at the 4-Minute Crypto Show, which is produced every weekday and located at 4minutecrypto.com. It's the place to get your daily dose of crypto news, and as always, 4 minutes or less. And one last thing, please take a look at my new website, Crypto Crybaby. This website is for the true crypto fan and sells Bitcoin and crypto gear like t-shirts, caps, and so much more. Take a look at CryptoCrybaby.com today. Thanks again for listening. Love you guys.
Thanks for listening to the Crypto Cousins podcast. Please share the show with your friends. They can subscribe by going to CryptoCousins.com/subscribe. And if you want to know more about Gary, just go to GaryLeland.com. Make sure and join Gary and all the Crypto Cousins every week for a new episode of the Crypto Cousins podcast. The Crypto Cousins podcast and the information included in the podcast are not intended as investment advice. Investing in any cryptocurrency is risky, and you should never invest more than you can afford to lose. Always seek professional advice before investing in any cryptocurrency. Please understand, you are using any and all information from the Crypto Cousins at your own risk.